Protests rage in Belarus. China has a lot to lose. China's Belt and Road investments there are worth billions. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Belarus, the land of opportunity. If you're the wildly popular president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, or if you're the Chinese Communist Party. Belarus is here, snuggled up against Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and a bunch of other Eastern European countries that Americans have totally heard of before. You've probably heard of the massive protests in Belarus over the last few weeks. People there say the presidential election was rigged. We did an entire episode about the Belarus elections and how it relates to the US on our other channel, America Uncovered. Check it out. But basically what you need to know for China Uncensored is that this guy, President Lukashenko, has been president of Belarus since 1994. That's 26 years. And he just won re-election again. Like I said, wildly popular. Did I mention the election process is controlled by his administration without independent oversight? Anyway, our favorite presentator, Xi Jinping, was one of the first world leaders to congratulate him on his re-election. Believe me, it was a short list. Lukashenko is known as the last dictator of Europe. And dictators have to stick together, right? That's why they started the International Society of Lifelong Leaders. The International Society of Lifelong Leaders is dedicated to connecting, supporting, empowering, and advancing like-minded lifelong leaders. It's the world's leading professional association for dictators. I hear they have a killer annual meeting. So it's no surprise that Xi is supporting Lukashenko. But it turns out the Chinese Communist Party has a bit more interest in Belarus than just empowering a fellow dictatorship. Belarus is an important part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, also known as One Belt, One Road to massive amounts of debt. What's the Belt and Road Initiative, you ask? Oh, you should never ask me that, because that's when I play this explainer from Chinese state-run media.
The belt connects to land, the road moves on the sea. The promise that they hold is joint prosperity. The future's coming out. The belt and road is how.
It's catchy and sounds great at first, but soon you realize you're stuck with it forever. And then it's just pain. Do you understand now? Okay, to make things a little clearer, the Belt and Road Initiative is China's trillion-dollar plan to build infrastructure around the world. A lot of this investment ends up going to developing countries with lifelong leaders, because the Chinese regime is perfectly happy to give out huge loans without any pesky human rights conditions, unlike Western liberal democracies. Lukashenko is one of the most vocal supporters of the Belt and Road strategy among European leaders, and has overseen a surge in trade with China. In fact, between 2000 and 2014, Minsk received more than $7.6 billion of Chinese financial support in the form of aid and loans. Just this past December, Belarus got a $500 million loan from China. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Chinese money has financed new roads, power plants, and a luxury hotel in the capital, Minsk. And then there's the Great Stone Industrial Park. Hailed recently by Mr. Xi as a model project of the Belt and Road Initiative, the park aims to turn an area twice the size of Manhattan into a city studded with factories, research centers, and accommodation for the army of workers that will be needed to keep the place running. In fact, here's the model of the model project. Lukashenko doesn't look like he's having fun. Maybe Xi won't let him play with the model. And that's because the Belt and Road isn't just free money. It's a scam, a Belarus, if you will. That's a kind of highbrow political analysis and humor you can only get on China Uncensored. It's like a box of fine wine. Now, China talks up Belarus, calling it their gateway to Europe. Where have I heard that before? Oh, right, when they said the Czech Republic was their gateway to Europe, and Greece, and Italy, and Germany. In fact, all the Western Balkans. Now I know why Lukashenko looks so sad. He just learned that Belarus isn't China's gateway to Europe. And that's because, and I know this will shock you, China doesn't truly care about Belarus. But Belarus really depends on China, mostly shunned by European investors, and wary of becoming too dependent on Russia, which has a record of trying to grab its prize assets. Belarus has eagerly turned to China. In fact, with the protests caused by the recent election, there are some fears Russia might decide to make peace in Belarus permanently. So Lukashenko has tried to use China to balance Russia. That's not going to work. Belarus does sit on one of the most convenient trade routes from China to Europe. However, it is only one of the 6 official land-based economic corridors of the BRI. Moreover, for trade with Europe, the maritime route is much more critical. Belarus also doesn't have substantial natural resources, so it's not that appealing to China. The Belt and Road also completely depends on Russia's good graces. I mean, look at it. Look how much of the belt goes through Russia. And Russia and China's relationship goes deeper than that. Russia, like China, is also a permanent member of the UN Security Council, and the only one that teams up with China to fight the US. If Lukashenko thinks he can leverage China to fight Russia, he's wrong. Sure, Xi Jinping gave Lukashenko a nice toy model. But Xi Jinping gave Putin a best friend medal. And you can only have one best friend. For China, that's never going to be Belarus. But it's not just deep sadness for Belarus. It's also going to hurt. Because for a lot of countries, the Belt and Road has been nothing more than debt trap diplomacy. That's how China got Sri Lanka to cough up a 99-year lease on a deep water port that may someday soon become a Chinese naval base. But bad news. In China's eyes, Belarus might not even be good enough for a debt trap. So why is Belarus part of the Belt and Road? Well, it's a pretty unflattering reason, according to Polina Prismakova, an assistant professor at Florida Atlantic University who studies China's role in her home country, Belarus. China was not seeking to push Belarus into a debt trap so as to grab assets, as happened in Sri Lanka, but simply trying to generate business for Chinese companies that have run out of things to build in China. China, she said, is oversaturated with too many new towns, new roads, new power plants, which means that Chinese companies need places like Belarus to keep building. But despite the fact that Belarus isn't really China's gateway to Europe and doesn't even have any assets worth taking, the Chinese Communist Party will continue to empower a fellow lifelong leader. They want to see Lukashenko crush the protests in Belarus because they don't want the people of Hong Kong getting any ideas. Again. And also, if Lukashenko does lose power in Belarus, there's always the danger that the next leader of Belarus could stop cooperating with the Belt and Road, like what happened in Malaysia. Even under the current regime, there were protests last year against a Chinese factory in Belarus. So the election protests in Belarus could have a big effect on China's Belt and Road. I think Lukashenko just wants to be left alone to play with his toys. And now is the time when I answer a question from a fan who supports China Uncensored on Patreon. David Leah Smith asks, are you doing an episode on the recent shuffle, called a purge by some outlets, of senior CCP officials? Does this suggest that Xi is becoming more paranoid about being overthrown? Political infighting in the Chinese Communist Party. My favorite topic. Yes, Xi is ramping up for another big purge, this time in the domestic security forces. Officials have been told to turn the blade inwards and scrape the poison off the bone. In other words, they'd better turn on each other if they don't want Xi to come after them. We recently did a full episode about this called Communist Power Struggle Threatens to Take Down Xi Jinping. Xi is definitely feeling the pressure. The trade war, the coronavirus, nationwide floods. The Communist Party is facing disaster on all fronts, and Xi is the one who'll take the fall. Unless he cushions that fall with the bodies of all his enemies. Party insiders are openly criticizing him. And when Xi feels threatened, he doesn't go on the defensive. He goes on the offensive. So things are about to get very interesting. Thanks for your question, David. Thank you for watching. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe. Remember, we publish new videos on China Uncensored every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. So if you aren't seeing them, double check that you're subscribed with the notification bell on. And if you like uncensored news about China, please support the show on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/China Uncensored to see how. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.